Hello Agent, welcome to the Memories of a Spy devlog. Here are this month's updates. I've created an additional warp spot that is linked to this game object here, so if I'm working on something and I need to be somewhere specific to test, I just put this warp game object there and punch in the warp command. This saves a ton of time. Easy Collider. Who doesn't hate making colliders for their models? I don't, because I use Easy Collider and this shit makes it a breeze, enjoyable even. You can make custom meshes if you'd like, but you can also use multiple primitive colliders like boxes, spheres, and capsules. Super straightforward, super easy and fast, highly recommended. Making original assets is so time-consuming. The most time-consuming part of making original assets is finding the right design references and finding the right textures. I'm making a period piece, so it's important that things appear as they would have from that time. But also this is just a video game, and an intentionally cartoonish one at that, so I'm flexible when it comes to anachronisms. A lot of my work art directing is finding the balance between what is acceptably out of period and what isn't. I can say that generally the game takes place in the 1960s, but I haven't said any year explicitly. I've noticed that when I need to build a new model, the longest part of the process is usually finding the right references, which can take hours. The second longest part is finding the textures and photoshopping them to suit my needs. And then the quickest part is modeling the thing. Programming for multiplayer. When you're making a game, it's very important to decide early on whether or not you intend on creating a multiplayer mode, especially for online multiplayer. This is because programming a single-player game allows you some freedoms when deciding how the world reacts to the player and how the player influences the world. But the moment you introduce a second or third player into the scene, the game needs to know which player it should be focusing on. For example, which camera it should be rendering, or which player should be controlled by the inputs, or which player the enemies should chase, or which player's death to trigger the game over screen, or which player's points to trigger the win screen, and so on. It's a little more obvious when considering how these things would affect a local multiplayer setup, but those things get multiplied when you have all these networking considerations in online multiplayer. For example, if you have physics in-game, the way an object drops and rolls around needs to drop and roll around the same exact way for people on both ends of the network, which means its position and rotation need to be explicitly monitored to make sure there is a universal or shared outcome. When the outcome is not shared and instead is different for people on different ends of the network, you end up seeing glitches like the way characters rubber band back and forth if they're lagging. For one person they may appear to be in front of you, and to another person they may appear to be behind you. It's a simple enough concept to grasp, but programming things to deal with networking can be a total headache. I've known from very early on that I intend on making this game multiplayer, but I've still had to go through and make some changes to better accommodate this. At this point, everything is set up for a future of online multiplayer, or at least to the best of my abilities. One of the cooler things that came out of needing to finesse stuff for multiplayer was that it made my time and time zone system way more streamlined and basically gave me the automatic time and sun position changes when I go to different cities. Game development dreams. Over the holidays I was crunching super hard on the game to the point where night after night I would dream about it. Like, no joke, dreaming about programming. Literally seeing Unity and Playmaker in my dreams. Full-blown problem solving. The craziest thing was that I would wake up in the middle of the night and be like, "Hey Siri, take a note saying," and then I would ramble off some solution I had to a problem I was dealing with that night. Maybe half the time it was garbage, nonsensical logic, or even, funnily enough, just a solution I tried before but my unconscious mind wasn't willing to accept didn't work the last time, or something like that. But the other times I had actually dreamt of solutions that worked, which is fucking crazy to me. Sketching systems. I want to start this off by saying there's a million ways to program something, and this isn't even the only way I do things, it's just a way I do things often. And that is, when I'm programming a new thing in my games, I like to sketch it out, like a thumbnail sketch for the artists in the audience. So I do something similar with programming games. I'll create a handful of states by control-clicking around in the general flow direction I can imagine things going in, and then I go state by state writing in the names of what each state will do. and then I may add or move states around. Sometimes I'll toss in comment actions to describe what the state should do, or sometimes I'll just start throwing in actions. And if I do throw in actions, I'll probably just put them in without actually entering any of their values. Again, this is just to get the basic idea of how things might move around. And then finally I'll start filling in the values, creating events and transitions, connecting states, and actually building the FSM proper. Sketching up systems can also extend to laying out groups of game objects and even creating and naming a bunch of FSMs without even putting anything in them yet. Sometimes, if I really don't feel confident with jumping into programming something just yet, I'll have a Notepad document open and I'll start writing out the program logic in plain English. Writing things out in a Notepad first can be good for getting ideas brewing first, but I've found that this can also get a little messy, and without the actual FSMs and actions in front of me, there may be some programming oversights. Sometimes I'll use a Trello checklist to sketch out game logic and then use that as a map while designing an FSM. Roadblocks and low points. Alright, let's get emotional for a second. If you've ever embarked on a large creative endeavor, you might be familiar with the peaks and valleys of energy, motivation, and confidence. One day you're brimming with excitement, full steam ahead, getting tons of work done, and then the next day you can barely look at your project without wincing or jumping back in bed or watching YouTube videos or playing somebody else's game or literally doing anything other than working on your own game. At times, these peaks and valleys can seem random, and for some people it may be a medical condition, but regardless of how this works for you, it always helps to keep an eye out for some red flags that you might want to brace for impact for a wave of shitty feelings. These red flags can be things like getting stuck on a programming problem, or designing systems that are repetitive and tedious to create, or no longer being able to put off some part of the process that you really don't enjoy doing. I hit one of these lows recently, and it was because all three of those things. On top of that, I ran into some bugs and ended up using some really janky workarounds to solve them. Because I couldn't exactly get help from the people on the internet during the holidays. Well, I could have, and there were people available, and I'm thankful to anyone who tried, but also couldn't expect folks to drop all their holiday stuff to help me out with my little indie game. So I just kept my head down and kept working with my janky solutions. And honestly, before I knew it, I had actually gotten a lot of work done, and was proud of what I did given my limitations. And then Alex, the creator of Playmaker, ended up coming through with the fix, which was a true Christmas miracle. Thanks, Alex. I'm back in the swing of things now, and I just wanted to remind everyone, when you're feeling stuck on a project, you're not alone, and you won't be stuck forever. Level design, layouts, and grayboxing, or grayboxing for UK and European. The game world of Memories of a Spy is made up of 6 cities: Washington, D.C., London, Paris, Berlin, Morocco, and Moscow. This is an open world-ish game, but also for the speed and style of gameplay I want players to engage in, I couldn't let the world get too big. I need characters to cross paths with each other by accident, but not too often, and they need to be able to hide in the nooks and crannies of each city. Lastly, this is a spy game, so it needs to have the world travel element. Back in the planning stages, I had come up with a rough idea as to what would be in each city, like cafes, pubs, libraries, newsstands, and hotels. Each city also has its own unique airport. I use Google Images and YouTube to look up references for each city to see what they look like in the 1960s. There's some really fascinating stuff out there. Here are just a few examples of references I've pulled from. After I got a good idea of how I could adapt these real-world places into levels for a video game, I sketched them out on paper. These are top-down layouts, and each floor gets a layout if it's different, but for repeating rooms, like the rooms of a hotel, I just draw the one time. In these layouts, I include walls, stairs, doors, windows, furnitures, and sometimes decorations like plants or special items like elevators and pillars. I mentioned before that I started using Cinti's prototype assets to block out my world, so that's what I use to block out these cities. For the most part, these places are just like I drew them. While I'm blocking out a world, I'll take occasional breaks to run the game so I can actually walk around in the level just to feel it out and make sure everything just feels right. Cool stream moments. Lately I've been streaming on the weekends, just popping in for a few hours to work on the game and hang out with the chat, answer some questions for some people. And there have been moments I was glad to have captured on stream, and I've been thinking about maybe uploading my favorite clips as their own little videos, so here's a couple of them. I'm gonna take a step back from that. I can handle that later. Let's see what else we can do for now. Phone a friend, 2 lifelines left. Yeah. I want to, you know what? Let's have a little guest. Let's see if we can have a guest appearance on the stream right now. Yo, dude, what are you doing? Oh, you're working? Holy shit. I'm streaming right now, and I was gonna do a phone a friend kind of deal, lifeline kind of deal, like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? And I was gonna hit you up to help me spitball some solutions to how time works in my game. Do you have 5 minutes, maybe? Yo. Okay, so everybody, this is the homie Harrison. He's an engineer.
What's up?
He's an engineer. He's very good at math, and he's the exact person I would call for something like this. So I am designing a flight schedule system for all of the flights in the game. So if one full day is 720 degrees of rotation of the hour hand, then it resets back to 0 at the end of that, and that constitutes one full day passing, so it goes back to 0. That's a new day, right? I can't add 120 to 719 and expect it to know that, like, once it resets back to 0, that it's gonna need that, you know. You kind of see what I'm saying there is like...
In the game, if you're leaving at 719 degrees
Yeah.
in time,
Right.
then in another minute or in another degrees, it's the start of a new day.
Right.
So isn't it actually correct that you would add the remaining amount of time, again measured in degrees, to 0, representing the time you arrive at the next day?
I guess, okay, see, you literally just used a word right now that, like, basically, I don't know why I haven't looked at it that way, but, like, the remaining amount of time. I guess that's my problem. Maybe my answer is that then. I need to figure out how to get the remaining amount of time.
So what you could do is separately do a computation where you add, say, 120 to 719.
Right.
What do you get, like 839?
Right, but then subtract 720.
Yeah.
Right. Fucking brilliant. I knew it, bro. Nice. All right, so everybody, give a big applause to the homie Harrison for coming through pretty hard on this, and at 4 minutes and 30 seconds, no less. So we're gonna let him get back to work, back to the grind on a fucking Sunday, bro. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, it's life.
All right.
See you.
All right. Thanks, man. Peace.
Bye.
Nice. I don't know why I didn't think of that shit. So it is Virginia Walsingham, the Mulwares, tan suit, bushy mustache, very dark skin, bushy mustache, tan suit. No, none of you. There's only one person over here that has very dark skin. What about one of you? No. This could be. There's one guy right there. Nope. This must be it. Bushy mustache? No. Very dark skin, tan suit, bushy mustache. Oh! I love that shit. Came out from behind the wall. Oh my god, see, those are the moments that I want. Oh, it's so good. It's so, and it came out just from the janky facade of like this broken level, but like when it's like somebody coming out of like, you know, like a floral shop, or like, you know, somebody getting out of their car, if they, you know, you make that reveal and it's like, there's the guy I'm looking for. Okay, that felt so good. Okay, come on. Okay, let's try that. Oh my god. It's like, I'm looking for him, but he's not there. Where is he? And he just walks into frame. So wait, let me just make sure I'm getting this right. Right? Suit, bushy mustache, skin's very dark. Right, here we go. Yes! Yes! Woo! It feels so good. Item stashing system. A big part of the spy genre is, of course, the gadgets. And there's a lot of gadgets that do one thing, but are disguised as something more innocuous, like a camera hidden in a matchbox, or an explosive in a bundle of flowers. Sometimes it's to conceal equipment, sometimes it's to smuggle something through security, sometimes it's to share information without looking like you're sharing information. So I've devised a simple stashing system that goes like this. Items have a size number, this is how big they are, and they also have a size capacity number, which represents the maximum size of things that can fit inside of it. The capacity number is usually just one number lower from its size. So this package is a 3, this camera is a 2, and the cigarette is a 1. I can put the camera inside the package. I can also put the cigarette inside of the camera and then put the camera inside of the box. So now I can take the camera out of the box, then the cigarette out of the camera. Collision matrix optimization adds hella frames. As I've gone on building this game, I've had to keep an eye on the frame rate. Generally not worry about it too much, but also I need to do some optimizing every time the FPS gets a little too low. The most taxing thing has been collision detection. I saw all these articles and YouTube videos showing how Unity should be able to handle a ton of simple rigid bodies bouncing around in the scene, and was wondering why the fuck the very few I had in my scene were slowing things down so much. Turns out I really have been neglecting the power of layers and the collision matrix. I took literally all of 2 minutes to open up my collision matrix and just unchecked all the boxes I didn't think were necessary, and then hit play and saw my FPS went from 80 to 120 FPS. So, if you're running into some serious chuggage, try optimizing your collision matrix. Optimizing for lots of NPCs. While I was in the middle of optimizing, I was also on the hunt for how to best handle crowds of NPCs, or just a lot of NPCs in general, like in open world games. Here is one of the more helpful pieces of information I found, a video from the YouTube channel AI in Games, which I highly recommend you check out if you haven't already, and subscribe too.
Meaning that while there can be over 300 active behavior tree-driven AI in a given level, the ones farthest away from the player update their behavior less frequently, as the CPU resource used for updating AI prioritizes those closest to you. In addition, the animations of these distant AI are either dialed down in quality or turned off entirely.
I have the basics of this flight system set up, but holy fuck does it feel like a mess. But for now, the basic system currently allows you to go to the airport, step up to the ticket associate, which brings up this menu. This menu shows you the flights that depart from this city, and then when you select which city you want to go to, it shows you the available flight times for today. Each city has a morning, afternoon, and red-eye flight. Then you press buy and the associate gives you your ticket. I can grab this ticket, put it in my inventory, drop it just like a normal item. I'm trying to make this game in a very analog way, where everything works in a very tactile sort of way. I think this can give rise to more interesting systemic situations, like being able to steal plane tickets, either so you can get somewhere or so you can prevent someone from going somewhere. If I click on this ticket, you can go into its FSM and see the variables inside match the options I selected when I bought it. I also have other variables set up here, like which seat is assigned to you. When you buy a plane ticket, you automatically get added to the passenger list of the airplane. So when the flight is boarding, the gate agent can make sure you're supposed to be on that flight and not just trying to sneak on. And here's the other thing, if I go and buy a bunch of tickets for these times, you'll see that eventually the flight can be totally booked, and you'll have to wait to the next day for new flights to open up in that time slot. The last thing I need to add into this is the payment aspect, but that'll have to wait for when I finish building the currency system, which, holy fuck, like, exchange rates? Yeah, I barely understand that shit in the real world, like, how the fuck am I gonna... Behavior trees. I've been programming my NPCs in a way that I would later find out resembles a behavior tree. The problem is, it's not really a behavior tree that I was building, and so my amateur approach has led to some confusing navigation and annoying patchwork. So I started looking into behavior trees more and have seen how they're often compared to finite state machines, since they are such similar systems. Programmers often favoring behavior trees over FSMs, citing that FSMs can be limiting. Behavior trees can be built using finite state machines, as described in this article. Some closing thoughts on this last month. Learning how to use the tools to make games can be a more or less straightforward process, but learning the design theory behind games is a whole other thing. Thankfully, there are channels like Game Maker's Toolkit and AI in Games, which dive into the ways professional developers have handled user interface, player health, AI, open world systems, and other such common things that future developers will also handle. It's easy to find a tutorial on pathfinding, but not so easy to find a tutorial on how to implement pathfinding in other novel ways, like in games how pathfinding is used to simulate the way sound travels through an environment. And if you do manage to find a tutorial discussing that in depth, odds are you'll be watching it and simultaneously sort of figuring out how all of that translates to the specific engine or tools you're using. Like I said, in game development there's a million ways to do the same thing. And no matter how many GDC talks you watch, or how many essays and slideshows you tear through, you'll always end up creating some combination of those different approaches to suit your specific needs. Thanks for watching. I hope you all had a safe and happy holiday, and welcome into the new year. I want to thank everyone who has supported me and this channel over this last year. The channel's finally about to hit that 1K mark. I think we just are around 800 right now. So if you dig this channel, it would help out loads just to subscribe and say what's up in the comments. All right, so stay safe, stay sane, and I'll catch you all on the stream. Jesus Christ. So much work. So much.